Hello. Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. I am Ursula Pottinger, and I'm here with my wonderful business partner and co-founder of Be Above Leadership, Anne, and also my very good buddy and collaborator in all things interesting, transformational, curious about the human condition. And today we have a wonderful topic, and it is how using the DEEP method help us stay above the line.
Yeah, I love that. So we're going to share with you an acronym, and we didn't create it. So we really have to, first of all, give full credit to the wonderful and brilliant Dr. Ramani Durvasula, who is an expert on narcissism. And this actually came from one of her videos where she talks about using the DEEP method when you're dealing with a really toxic person. And as Ursula and I were looking at this and talking about it, we realized that we had been sort of following some of these guidelines somewhat in general, and that we'd gotten better at it over the years as a way to manage conflict, difficult conversations sometimes. So let's take you through it. What is DEEP? Let's go through what is DEEP. Do you want to start with the first?
Yeah, I'll start with DEEP.
Let's say what they are, and then we'll go through each one.
Yeah. So DEEP, D stands for defend, E stands for engage, the second E stands for explain, and P stands for personalized. So it is deep, but actually what we are trying to do is don't
go deep.
Don't go deep. In most areas of your life, please do go deep. But in regards to this acronym, it is really don't. So don't defend, don't engage, don't explain, and don't personalize.
So it's a really, and I think about the 4 agreements, which in one of the agreements in the 4 agreements is don't take anything personally, which can be such a stress relief. And so, what often when we're in a high conflict situation, or, I think about areas where the other person just is not seeming to want to listen for whatever reason. We're not saying that you don't ever want to engage or you never want to explain. But sometimes what starts happening is that the more that you go deep, you end up with it just spirals into more and more toxicity. So this is a way to kind of manage your energy. And we think to stay above the line. And what we mean by that in our model of effectiveness, we think about being above the line as being in an effective state versus below the line, where it kind of takes you into more of a wound up state, more anger, more fear, more hopelessness, rather than being able to be more cognitively clear and also more skillful. And so sometimes the answer is don't go deep. And Dr. Ramani says, particularly if you're dealing with someone who really seems like they're a narcissist or a very toxic person. Yeah. So the first thing you want to do is not get into the defending of yourself. And, well, you didn't understand me. And what else do you think about when you think about don't defend, Ursula?
Well, I particularly think about a situation when I feel wrongly accused, when somebody is saying I did something or I said something that, at least from my perspective, I didn't do or didn't say, or they completely misinterpret that. And so what I naturally want to do is defend myself by saying, no, I didn't say that. And I know I didn't mean that. And you got that wrong. That defend is, I think, really quite natural, especially when we are in a conflictual situation.
Oh my gosh. I am remembering a conflict between 2 people very dear to me where they emails were like this long. And then one of them would say to me, can you read this email and see what he said in paragraph 2? And I'm like, no. And the email of the first one is like this. And then the email of the second, in paragraph 2, you said this and that. And I'm like, okay, this is a road to hell. Excuse my language. It's like, and they're so busy defending and defending. No one's listening to each other.
No, and it's what I call the he said, she said, or she said, he said scenario, where, I think it really, how I feel about that, it can take me and the other person and generally everyone into this deep rabbit hole out of which it's almost impossible to get out of it.
Right. And so I think on the one hand, if you've got someone who's really capable of good, productive conversation, deep, just listening, maybe we need the opposite acronym, I was going to say deep listening, but not in this acronym, but really listening without defense is good advice to see. And if you've got someone who's more on the toxic spectrum, if you try to defend, they're going to gaslight you. They're going to, which is, they're going to take little pieces to try to, manipulate you.
Right.
You're not familiar with the term gaslighting. So it's a manipulative way of communicating. So it's not going to make any difference. So on the one hand, being defensive isn't going to move a productive conversation forward. And on the other hand, if you are with someone who really fundamentally has no interest in a productive conversation, you defending yourself will just make them kind of excited about the conversation, because they'll figure out a number of ways to tell you, find little things to tell you how stupid you are.
Well, when I listened to Dr. Ramani's YouTube video on deep, one of the things that she said that really sort of struck me was, she said, it's the cardinal rule: don't defend because they don't care.
Right.
So it does not matter what you say. They do not care about your opinion, your defense. It's basically goes over their head.
And, and when you said it's so natural to want to do this, I think I was listening to an expert on childhood trauma, and he said a very high percentage of our childhood trauma comes from feeling like we're not really seen or understood.
Yeah.
And so this feeling of like, just no, I didn't mean that, or, that's, you're misinterpreting, this desire to be understood is just like, it just bubbles up. Yeah. And so I want to say something about neuroplasticity, because it's true about all of these. If you are going to be uncomfortable, or, maybe you've already learned how to do this, but I was really uncomfortable at first. And because it went against all my instincts.
Yeah.
Be seen, to get myself out there, until I realized with certain people, they don't care. And I'm wasting time and I'm giving them ammunition. And I had to walk through this kind of discomfort. And one of the things I used to do in one situation that was pretty difficult with someone who really didn't care how I felt, is I would write him long emails, but I'd leave them in my drafts folder.
Yes.
And every single time, by the time I sent the email, because this is someone I needed to respond to, I couldn't just walk away from, we had some shared life things. What I would do by the time I finally sent the email is it would just be like a couple of sentences.
Yes.
Either no or okay or whatever, but no defense. But the first two emails, pages of defense. So that's a strategy.
Absolutely. And I have done that even with less toxic people. It's just like I get an email and it's like, no, I didn't say that. No, I didn't mean it. And I keep typing. And then I, just like you, I look at it and I go, do I really need to say that? No. Do I need to really say that? No. And the more I read it, the smaller and the shorter
the email gets. And, and the other thing you can use, and I know people have used this strategy, is if you feel like you're being sort of defensive, send the email to, a good friend and say, how does this sound? The other thing that is my check-in is, am I still ramped up? Do I still have a lot of body sensations as I'm rereading my email? Or does it feel fairly neutral, in which case it's probably safe to send?
Yes. Yeah. Very good. Very good point.
So, okay. Her next one is explain. Don't explain. Why would you not want to explain? Again, we want to be seen and heard and understood. And why would we not want to explain?
Well,
fundamentally.
I feel it's a little bit like it sort of ties into the defend, because
Right.
as we're defending, we are explaining ourselves. We're giving our perspective.
Yeah.
We're saying, no, this is what it was, and here is the situation. And in the case of toxic personalities, I think we have to remember that they have their narrative, they have their story around that, and it doesn't really matter again what we say, what our narrative is. They won't hear it.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking about, one of the places I think it would really, I have learned to go deep and could help with everyone's nervous system is in online dialogues, like when you're feeling like you're getting hit by what we might call a troll, and somebody's sort of like lobbing a little, grenade into your world, and we want to defend and explain and all of this, and then it just escalates, rather than just saying, clearly they don't get it, and in this case I don't think they want to get it. Now that's different than someone
Yeah.
who is seeking understanding, who
Yeah.
is saying, did you mean this, because that's how I'm taking it, but tell me. That's
Yeah.
a different invitation. And Ursula, I'm thinking of an example with a really wonderful group that we're working with, that we had a meeting with yesterday. And, they were able to bring in some context that we didn't have. And the explanation really was wonderful, but we were coming in sort of going, okay, what's happening here isn't making sense. And they're like, oh, well, let me tell you what's happening that we haven't told you yet. Oh, thank you. Thank you for the explanation. But this is healthy people having a healthy dialogue.
Well, and I love the distinction. So when we have the don't deep on one side, and we are looking now at, if you don't defend, then what do you do? And in our case, we suggested just listen and don't get into the rabbit hole. And then in explain, what I'm hearing you saying, which I really love, it's don't explain, but ask for context, which is very different from, context is, here is the information that you didn't have. And that was really true in the meeting yesterday. We didn't know that this is what was
right. And
happening.
I think the distinction I keep wanting to come back to is, this is a technique when you're dealing with someone who's not interested in a productive outcome.
Yes.
The group we were with yesterday was very interested in a productive
Yes.
outcome. So explanation, great. But again, it depends on what we're speaking into.
Mm-hmm.
And with certain people, either because they are just that way, or because situationally they may be overwhelmed by, stress, or overwhelmed by their opinion and not able to see something else, it just is a waste of energy to spend a lot of time explaining.
Yeah.
So
again, Dr. Ramani, she says, she has this little word saying, well, just understand. You just have to understand. And we need to realize that, in toxic, personalities and relationships, they won't understand. They won't understand your point of view, no matter how hard you try to explain yourself.
And again, this takes some discipline in learning. Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing I would say here, and I think she talks about this in her video, is, like if I think when I was going through the difficult time that I mentioned with a person who really just didn't care about my perspective, just did not care at all, I would go to Ursula because I needed somebody to understand. And I would say, here's what's going on. And, this is how I feel. And this person doesn't seem to care. And I could explain myself to her.
Yes.
Because she was a curious, interested person. But it's being aware, am I talking to a brick wall? Who am I talking to? Why am I wasting my energy trying so hard to be understood when there's no receptivity there?
Yes.
And this is absolutely critical, I think, if you are dealing with any kind of very disrupted, toxic relationship. So
I'm
sorry.
Yeah, I'm curious about something, and on your perspective, I'm sort of looking through the lens of working relationships right now.
Yeah.
I know that sometimes people in work situations that get so stressed, they don't have the capacity to listen. They don't want to listen. That they are really, although they're not toxic, but they're so overwhelmed and so stressed that they have lost the capacity to be empathetic and human. And I think in those situations, this don't deep, I think can also work really, really well.
I think so as well. And I think then what you're looking at, so we're looking at kind of three levels of communication. There's people that no matter what, they're just not interested because they are what we would call a disrupted or toxic personality. And yeah, these people exist. There's the people that are always going to be interested. And so when you explain, they're like, oh, thank you. I didn't know. I didn't understand. That's so helpful. Sorry, I was being a jerk. Right.
Yeah.
And then there's this middle ground where sometimes you've just got like, I don't care, but it's not because who they are as a person who doesn't care. It's because they're stressed. And then I think what we need to do is say, okay, right now, I'm not going to go deep.
Exactly.
I'm not going to defend. I'm not going to explain. I might not engage. I'm not going to personalize. This is you, but I'm going to design. And I'm going to say there's some things that I think we need to talk about in terms of maybe how we work together about this project. When is a time where you have some bandwidth for that?
Yes. Yeah.
And so you're understanding, your compassion, you're understanding, okay, anything I hear right now, anything I say right now, they're just going to be like, blah! When is a better time?
Yeah, so I love that because it really shows that it's not black and white. It's very, very layered how we employ this acronym. Okay, so we go to engage.
Engage. So it's really just this place of saying, kind of holding our own center. Saying they're wanting me to get involved, and I'm thinking about someone. I think I'm going to be honest about this one and say that when we started doing work with trauma and coaching, and we put out our very first offering of training coaches to work with trauma, which is, by the way, very thoughtful. We looked at ICF, International Coach Federation, ethics and requirements. We did it with a very conscientious way. We talked to therapists, and we came up with a coaching program, and we got one email, only one, pretty good, huh? Basically saying something along the lines of, please don't do that. Kind of like
you need to stop.
You don't have any business doing coaching and trauma. That's a therapy thing. And, really the answer there was, standing in our center, trusting ourselves and not engaging and just saying, and I think what you said was, thank you for your feedback.
Yeah, that's all I did.
There was very clearly, this person had a very different opinion. We needed to check in over here and say, we know what we're doing and why we're doing it, and we trust that. And bless you, we're not going to get into a pissing match.
But I tell you, it was very tempting. It was very tempting. I wanted to defend that we had researched for years this program, that we had researched for years and done International Coach Federation items. You had gone up and down, God knows what research documents to make it. I was really tempted not only to defend, but definitely to explain.
And to engage, and to really engage with them, and get into this, like,
Totally.
Wait, hold on, let's have and to kind of, and sometimes, again, this is not an absolute, it's not to say you never have a dialogue with people who don't agree with you. It's just did not feel like a productive use of our energy. Now, if I'm on a panel with, doing a presentation for somebody, and I'm on a panel and somebody has a different opinion about something, and we are in a collaborative conversation, and that's the point of it, is to have this dialogue. And I have an example of this, by the way. Then I'm going to engage, but this just felt like out of nowhere, someone telling us not to do something we'd already decided to do. Didn't feel productive, or like it would be a useful use of our energy, frankly.
Yeah, and back to the temptation to leads us to P, because in the
Can I
situation,
just say,
yeah,
I
hold
just
on,
have,
I want
one other
to
example.
just weave this in here. I know we're going to get to that eventually, but what I wanted to say is, when I got that email, because I wanted to defend and engage because I took it personal.
So they're really overlap, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Got it. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm thinking about the difference between engaging in healthy debate, if that's part of what you're up to. Like, our students come into class and, and people will say, well, hold on a minute, you're telling me this, and that's not what I've heard. And I'm like, yes, that's what we're here for. Absolutely. And I will tell you, some of the time they don't have enough context, and I can say, yes, but let me expand. I'm not done explaining. Some of the time it's been great, and we've said, like, that's really great, thank you for sharing, we're going to include that in the program. That's new knowledge. So it's not that we're saying don't ever engage. It's just, when it's not a productive conversation, like trolling, like being with someone who's poking you, who keeps poking you about something, who won't listen to know, who's not honoring your boundaries, who's coming in with an opinion they were never asked for. Right. Yeah. And it's not part of the process that you're engaged in. Then I think it's better to do what you did with that person and just be like, thank you for your feedback. Yeah. Moving on, because I need my energy for other things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Last one is P, don't personalize.
Well, and that's so much easier said than done. I mean, where do we even begin? Everything that comes at us in some way is meaningful to us. It's related to something that we value, that is important to us. Otherwise, we wouldn't pay any attention to it. So, how can we not take something personal when it speaks to our passion, our purpose, our values? That's a really, really hard thing to do.
Well, I love the distinction between, I really love this, Ursula. I really want to highlight this word of that it can be meaningful. But we have to pull that apart from, is it personal? And this is something, and I want to go more to some of the work we've been doing with relational trauma, and looking at someone we might put on the narcissism spectrum, where you have to ask yourself, is this antagonism, criticism, etc., is this actually about me, or is this just the way they operate?
Yeah.
And oftentimes in that situation, and why we say don't personalize, is it's just the dog that barks at everyone. It's not because you wore a red sweater that day. That dog barks. That's what they do. It isn't personal. And I'm thinking about some of the cast of characters, man, we've had such a wonderful career, 20 years. We've trained thousands and thousands of people all over the world, 99% of whom were absolutely delightful, and we're honored to know them. And there's been a few in there that have been interesting. But mostly they're just interesting. They're not, it isn't about us. They're just interesting in terms of their lives.
Well, absolutely. Again, to quote Dr. Ramani, which I absolutely love, she said, stay clear of self-blame. And I think certainly that is where I go when I personalize. I think I have done something wrong, so I'm blaming myself, and therefore I take whatever is coming at me personal. But when you're dealing with a toxic person, they make everything about you. Everything is your fault.
Nothing is self-responsible.
No, absolutely nothing is their fault. They're completely capable of self-reflection and empathy. So everything is your fault, which makes this just ridiculous.
Absolutely. And it's one of the things why it's really important in every area of life. If you're healing from relational trauma, dealing with a toxic boss or partner or a family member, or even just, like me and Ursula, doing a lot of public facing work where you meet a few characters. In Minnesota, where I'm from, we say, well, what did you think of so-and-so? And we say, well, they're different.
Minnesota, nice.
you meet some people who are, well, different. It is really, really helpful to have an externalized reality check in Ursula's mind. And I'm like,
you're mine.
Did I do something wrong? Or what about this? And, and I would think about after 20 years, sometimes Ursula's like, yeah, you did do something wrong. You should take that personal. You need to grow there, yes. And we've said that to each other because we're really, loving and lovingly honest with each other. But a lot of the time it's like, I'm betting that's kind of how they operate in their life. Yeah. And so please don't take it personally. Now we may need a strategy, but that can be the externalized reality check. And that is so important in our loving and positive communities.
Yeah. And I think when we look at all the D, E, and P, to have someone where you can take deep and go to them and say, listen, I need to tell you this. I need to explain this to you, so I don't need to do it over there. Here's why I take it personal. It can be so helpful because it really diffuses this pressure that sometimes we can feel when we're bottling it up in the air.
I just need to defend myself to someone. It's not useful to do it over there, but can I just tell you why this is crazy? And, and I think about, I will tell you, there's this thing on Reddit, and actually Dr. Ramani's been doing some commentary on it. And it's one of my favorites, and it's called, excuse the language, it's called, Am I the Asshole? And you get a community vote on whether you should be defending or personalizing or engaging. And, it's quite interesting because it's basically, you're saying, here's the situation. And, what happened here? And you get a chance to kind of defend yourself to the internet. And sometimes the internet comes back and says, yeah, you're the asshole. Mm-hmm. I know, you're defending yourself here, but the majority of people are saying, and it's fairly consistent. It's quite interesting.
Oh, that is interesting.
It's very interesting. So I encourage you to check it out. It's highly entertaining. But a lot of the time, the people that are writing in, the vote is, no, you didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, depending on the context. So
the other thing that I want to say about personalize, and this goes also back to the wonderful Dr. Ramani again, is that toxic personalities really use texting, for example, as a weapon, and getting into long-winded text messages about this is what you've done and this is who you are can really be sort of the bait to get you to engage,
and have you personalize. Let me say one other thing about kind of why some of us get very caught up in this deep piece, and then we'll wrap up. One reason is, especially in toxic relationships of any kind, that oftentimes the person who is the target of the toxic relationship is someone who's really gifted in things like empathy and responsibility. Yeah. And so when something goes wrong, the idea of saying, well, hold on, first of all, did I do something wrong? Maybe I did something wrong. It's can be higher than average. And as you were saying, Ursula, that if you're looking at somebody with really toxic personality traits, they're not looking here at what they did wrong. No. And they're pointing the finger. And if you're the one who takes that finger and points it back at yourself, that's exactly what they want.
Yes.
And so learning to say, hold on a minute. What can I trust about myself? What can I trust about my intention? What can I trust about my kindness and my commitment to good communication? Coming back here rather than taking their finger and grabbing onto it and, pointing it right there, because that's their strategy.
Well, and, sort of in closing, what I want to say, I think we all know to some degree who we are dealing with and what we're dealing with. And I want to use you as an example. Okay. I know that I can rely on it that whatever I have to say will be heard and taken in the way that it's meant to be taken. It is a pattern. I can rely on that. And therefore, I can also rely on my own internal process of saying, what I'm about to say, is this me or is it over there? Because then I know I can be really honest. This gives me an opportunity to be honest with myself, because I know I can be honest with you.
Right.
But if you have people in your life where you can't be honest with them, it's also much harder to look at the mirror and go, well, what is the honesty that I need to have? Because it gets very foggy.
Right, because they're going to twist that around. And
Yeah.
so I think there's a couple of things here. One is, it is a really helpful strategy to manage your energy in certain situations. We're not saying never go deep. We're saying be aware. And there are places where you don't want to, and you can manage your own energy by not. And then finding the people in your life and finding those, and maybe if you don't have any friends that really are like this is pretty much what you can rely on in a well-trained professional coach. Find the people that you can go deep with in a good way. In the traditional way, we mean deep. Expose yourself.
Yeah.
Really engage, really look at what you are making personal and what you maybe shouldn't be, and have that trusting communication. We all really need that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well
Thank
said.
you for being that for me, Ursula.
And likewise. Thank you.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you, everybody. We'll post the link to Dr. Ramani's video below. If you're at all interested in staying in touch, please like and subscribe. And we are Be Above Leadership. It's great hanging out with you today. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Take care.